For weeks, the world has been fixated on the strange visitor named 3I Atlas, an interstellar body that defied every expectation with its emerald glow, its pulsing rhythm, and its eerie defiance of the laws of physics. But just as scientists struggled to make sense of its behavior, the James Webb Space Telescope detected something even more unsettling. 3I Atlas is no longer alone. A second object, 100 times larger, has entered the frame, moving not randomly but on a trajectory that intersects perfectly with Atlas itself. Astronomers were stunned, not because two cosmic wanderers crossed paths, but because the alignment was too precise, too deliberate, as though this rendezvous was always part of the plan. And now, under the silent gaze of the universe, two colossal interstellar mysteries approach each other in an event so unprecedented that no words from science, history, or myth can prepare us for what is about to unfold. The second object, nicknamed Colossus by some astronomers, dwarfs Atlas by every measure. Where Atlas glowed green and pulsed with rhythm, this new arrival looms dark and vast, 100 times larger in diameter, with a gravitational field powerful enough to tug at nearby asteroids as it passes. Webb's initial images show an outline so immense it strains the sensors, not glowing like Atlas but absorbing light, as though it were cloaked in shadows. At first, scientists assumed coincidence, two interstellar visitors crossing paths at the same time, but orbital calculations destroyed that comfort. Colossus was not wandering blindly. Its velocity and trajectory curved in a way that suggested intention, slowing and adjusting until it matched Atlas's path with uncanny precision. In the void of space, where chance collisions are measured in billions of years, the odds of this encounter happening by accident are near zero. The evidence points to something else. This is not a coincidence. It is a meeting, a rendezvous written across the stars. As the days passed, the two objects began to interact in ways that left astronomers speechless. Atlas, with its emerald glow, seemed to intensify as Colossus approached, its pulses growing stronger and faster, like the quickening heartbeat of an organism sensing a partner. For the first time, the green light spread beyond its coma, streaming outward in thin beams that stretched toward the giant as though reaching out. In response, Colossus began to generate faint electromagnetic signatures, rhythmic but deeper, resonating like a bass note to Atlas's treble. The effect was that of a cosmic duet, two bodies separated by millions of kilometers but locked in synchronization, their signals intertwining across space. Space agencies rushed to deny that this was communication, but the pattern was undeniable. Atlas was no longer behaving as an isolated object. It was engaging with something larger, something older, something far more powerful. And humanity was watching, helpless, as two interstellar enigmas began a dance that seemed orchestrated. The arrival of Colossus did not just affect Atlas. Earth itself began to feel the consequences. The emerald veil that Atlas had cast across half the sky grew brighter still, but now it pulsed in resonance with a second, darker rhythm. Amateur astronomers reported shadows cutting across the stars, faint arcs that blotted out constellations, evidence of Colossus's vast presence. Satellites orbiting Earth began to record gravitational anomalies, small deviations in their paths that could only be explained by the influence of something massive moving through the solar system. Some reported interference in communications, deep hums in the static of radio transmissions, sounds that seemed to echo the rhythm of Atlas and its new companion. The heavens themselves appeared to transform, no longer random but patterned, structured, as though the entire sky was being rewritten by the interaction of two colossal visitors. Humanity had gone from watching a single mystery to being caught in the field of a cosmic convergence. And then came the most unsettling revelation. As Colossus closed the distance, it did not collide with Atlas, nor did it disrupt its orbit with raw gravity. Instead, it slowed and hovered, holding position relative to the smaller body with impossible precision. The two objects began moving together, locked in formation as though connected by an invisible tether. Webb's sensors recorded bursts of exotic particles streaming between them, exchanges of energy that no natural process could explain. To some, it looked like refueling. To others, it was more like communication or transfer, as though Atlas had always been a messenger, waiting for the arrival of something greater. The myths suddenly seemed less metaphorical, the green banner in the sky, the dragon calling to its master, the emerald torch guiding the return of something immense. Now, for the first time, humanity faced the possibility that Atlas was never meant to act alone. It was the herald, and now its master had arrived. As Webb focused on the space between Atlas and Colossus, it detected something astonishing. Streams of energy weaving back and forth, not chaotic bursts but highly structured filaments, glowing faintly in ultraviolet. These filaments formed a lattice that shifted and reconfigured itself as if alive, linking the two objects in a network that pulsed with the same rhythm as their electromagnetic emissions. Some scientists compared it to synapses firing in a brain, a nervous system stretched across millions of kilometers. Others dared to call it an umbilical cord, with Atlas feeding from the colossal body, or perhaps delivering something it had carried all along. Whatever the process was, it didn't resemble any known physics of cometary interaction. These were not random jets of dust and gas. They were deliberate, ordered exchanges. And the deeper question arose, if this was an exchange, what was being given, and what was being taken? Ordinary space events invite constant commentary from agencies and institutions, but as this cosmic rendezvous unfolded, the silence grew unbearable. NASA released no new Webb images. ESA canceled a scheduled briefing. China and Russia offered no acknowledgement at all. But cracks in the wall of secrecy began to form. A leaked recording from within an observatory suggested that Colossus emitted bursts of radiation that aligned perfectly with Earth's orbit, as though scanning us. Another insider claimed that Atlas's emerald glow had dimmed slightly, as though energy was being drained into the larger body. Amateur astronomers who uploaded videos of the interaction reported their content flagged, archived, or mysteriously corrupted. It felt less like a blackout born of caution and more like deliberate suppression, as if those who knew the truth understood that what was happening in the sky could not be explained in safe scientific language. Humanity wasn't just watching, it was being shielded from seeing too much. As the connection between the two objects strengthened, the rest of the solar system began to feel the resonance. Magnetometers on Jupiter's moons recorded synchronized fluctuations. The solar wind itself bent, shaped not by the sun, but by the electromagnetic dialogue between Atlas and Colossus. Even the distant Voyagers, on the edge of interstellar space, picked up faint but structured pulses echoing the same rhythm. The entire system seemed to vibrate with their frequency, as though the rendezvous had awakened a resonance that spread outward like ripples across a pond. Scientists struggled to classify the event. Was this a form of communication on a scale beyond imagination? Was it energy transfer? Or was it something far more profound, a process that required the entire solar system as its stage? Whatever it was not contained. Every world, every spacecraft, every field of plasma felt its tremor. Atlas was no longer an isolated anomaly. It was part of a system-wide transformation. And then came the most chilling aspect of all, behavior that suggested purpose. The lattice of energy between Atlas and Colossus began to shift into repeating geometries, triangles, spirals, and grids that rotated slowly before collapsing and reforming. Webb's algorithms flagged them as mathematical structures, patterns that bore resemblance to known constants and ratios found in biological systems, architecture, even ancient symbols carved into stone on Earth. Were these mere coincidences of plasma physics, or was the universe itself writing a message across the sky? Some suggested Atlas was a seed and Colossus the soil, that this was a process of activation. Others whispered of a fleet, with Atlas nothing more than a messenger beacon calling its master home. Whatever interpretation one chose, the message was undeniable. This was not chaos. This was not accident. This was design. And the rendezvous was only just beginning. Observers across the world began to notice something unsettling. 3I Atlas, once the emerald torch that painted half the sky, was no longer burning with the same intensity. Its pulses, once steady and strong, seemed to weaken, their intervals stretching as if its energy were being siphoned away. Spectral readings confirmed that the coma of Atlas was shrinking, not dispersing into dust like an ordinary comet but contracting inward, its light folding into the filaments that now tethered it to Colossus. To many astronomers, it looked like a sacrifice. Atlas giving itself over to the giant that had just arrived. For weeks, humanity had thought of Atlas as the main event, the enigma that demanded answers. Now it was becoming clear. Atlas had only been the beginning, a herald whose sole purpose was to deliver something to its master before fading into obscurity. As Atlas dimmed, Colossus began to change. At first, it was nothing more than a massive, light-absorbing shadow, a presence that seemed to swallow starlight without reflection. But then, as energy transfers continued, faint glimmers appeared along its surface, not random but patterned, like the slow ignition of a vast structure. Webb captured images of glowing arcs stretching across its edges, forming a lattice of light that shifted and grew more complex with every pulse it absorbed. Some researchers compared it to the activation of circuits, as though Colossus had been dormant until Atlas arrived with the spark to awaken it. Others saw something even more terrifying: the suggestion of structure on a scale beyond comprehension, lines too straight, patterns too deliberate to be natural. Colossus was no longer just a dark mass. It was becoming something active, something alive, or something built. Soon, the influence of the rendezvous extended far beyond the two objects themselves. Probes stationed near Saturn reported deviations in their telemetry, small distortions that hinted at gravitational anomalies spreading outward. Light from distant stars passing near Colossus appeared to bend unnaturally, not like ordinary gravitational lensing but in fractured, rippling patterns, as if space-time itself were being rewritten around it. Astronomers whispered about localized warping, the kind of distortion only theorized in advanced propulsion systems. Could Colossus be creating a field, preparing to move in ways no natural body could? Or was the distortion simply a byproduct of processes so far beyond human understanding that the distinction between natural and artificial no longer mattered? Whatever the answer, the solar system itself was being reshaped by its presence, a reminder that we were no longer dealing with objects but with forces capable of bending the fabric of reality. The final sign came not in light or matter but in rhythm. The pulses that Atlas had once generated alone were now amplified by Colossus, echoing across the solar system like a drumbeat. Voyager 1 and 2, far beyond the heliosphere, both recorded the same synchronized patterns, signals strong enough to pierce the veil of interstellar space. Analysts who mapped the timing noticed repeating sequences, patterns that mirrored prime numbers, golden ratios, and other mathematical constants. These were not random fluctuations. They were signatures of intelligence, the unmistakable hallmarks of intention. Atlas had been the messenger, the spark. Colossus was the receiver, the amplifier. And now, together, they were broadcasting something vast and deliberate into the universe. The rendezvous was not simply a meeting, it was an activation, and humanity had become the unintended witness to a message that might not have been meant for us at all. As Colossus awakened and Atlas dimmed, something even stranger began to unfold here on Earth. Amateur astronomers, who for weeks had shared thousands of images of the green glow, suddenly reported that their equipment no longer captured anything consistent. Cameras showed static, telescopes returned frames full of distortions, and live feeds glitched with repeating fragments of old data. Professionals using larger observatories faced the same anomalies. Files corrupted the moment they were uploaded, servers crashing without explanation. It was as if information about the rendezvous was being erased in real time, not just suppressed by governments but actively disrupted at the source. Theories spread wildly. Was Colossus emitting a signal designed to blind observation? Was the distortion a byproduct of its processes? Or was this intentional, a way of ensuring that what was happening in space could not be fully recorded? Humanity, for the first time in the digital age, found itself unable to capture what its own eyes could still see. The effects were no longer confined to telescopes and satellites. Earth itself seemed to shudder under the influence of the rendezvous. Magnetic field fluctuations intensified, triggering auroras so strong they reached across equatorial skies. GPS systems faltered, planes reported navigational errors, and ships at sea lost contact with satellites. Power grids flickered as sudden surges of electromagnetic interference rippled through transformers. In some regions, people reported strange physical sensations, headaches, ringing in the ears, even vivid dreams that seemed to pulse in the same rhythm as Atlas and Colossus. To the average person, it felt like the world had been pulled into the resonance, its invisible systems hijacked by a frequency that came not from Earth, but from the heavens. If this was an accident, it was catastrophic. But if it was deliberate, then it meant the rendezvous was not indifferent to us. It was reaching into our world on purpose. Then came the night when Colossus's shadow moved fully across Atlas's emerald glow. Observers described it as an eclipse, not of the sun or moon, but of a comet by something 100 times larger. The green veil that had stretched across half the sky dimmed, its brilliance blocked by the colossal body, leaving only faint rays seeping around its edges. For hours, the sky was dominated by the outline of Colossus, a shape so vast it swallowed constellations whole, its presence undeniable even to the naked eye. The spectacle was both breathtaking and horrifying, an unnatural eclipse in the dead of night, a reminder of scale that defied imagination. And then, as Atlas all but vanished in the shadow, new streams of light erupted from Colossus itself, geometries of emerald and indigo streaking outward, structured patterns that rotated across the heavens. Whatever was happening, it was no longer just a rendezvous. It was a transformation, and now Colossus was the one riding across the sky. When scientists analyzed the geometric light patterns emitted after the eclipse, they discovered something that froze them in disbelief. The shapes were not random. They followed sequences, repeating grids that matched ratios known in mathematics and nature, Fibonacci spirals, hexagonal tessellations, and even alignments that mirrored orbital resonances of planets in our solar system. It was as though Colossus was projecting a language written in light, a message inscribed across the stars. Some argued that it was communication directed outward, toward interstellar space. Others whispered that the patterns were for us, a signal humanity was only now advanced enough to recognize. If so, the timing was deliberate. Atlas had been the herald, the green flame that drew our attention. Colossus was the message itself, unfolding in patterns too precise to ignore. And as its light spread across the heavens, the terrifying realization set in. We were no longer bystanders. We were the audience. By the third week of observations, Earth itself felt fundamentally altered. Nights were no longer dark. Even when Colossus's shadow swallowed most of Atlas's emerald glow, the heavens radiated with shifting geometries of light. Cities reported strange electrical surges, not tied to storms but to the timing of the pulses. In remote areas, entire regions glowed faintly green under skies that should have been black, bathing forests, deserts, and oceans in an alien hue. Reports of disrupted circadian rhythms multiplied. People unable to sleep, others waking at precise intervals aligned with the pulses. Some hospitals even noted spikes in heart arrhythmias during the brightest emissions, as though the rhythm of Atlas and Colossus was synchronizing not only machines, but biology. Ordinary life was unraveling beneath an emerald canopy that no one could switch off. The world was no longer just watching the rendezvous, it was living inside it. Astronomical surveys soon revealed anomalies that pushed the mystery even further. Asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter began to drift slightly from their orbits, pulled not by planetary gravity, but by the unseen hand of Colossus. Even Mars itself showed subtle perturbations, its orbit nudged by the mass and influence of this giant interloper. Probes orbiting other planets reported minute but undeniable trajectory deviations, as though the solar system was being recalibrated around a new center of influence. The terrifying implication was that Colossus was not simply passing through, it was altering the dynamics of the system itself. If its presence could bend orbits and realign celestial bodies, then Earth's own path might not remain untouched. The question shifted from, what is it doing, to what is it planning? On Earth, panic and awe grew side by side. Religious leaders declared the rendezvous a fulfillment of prophecy, calling the Emerald Veil the banner of the end times. Governments issued contradictory statements, some urging calm, others quietly mobilizing resources as though preparing for catastrophe. Social media exploded with raw footage, skies so green they drowned the stars, shadows of Colossus blotting out constellations, auroras blazing where none should exist. But the most haunting footage came from people who claimed to capture faint sounds accompanying the pulses, low-frequency vibrations that rattled windows and echoed through the ground. Scientists denied that space could transmit sound, but witnesses swore they heard it. The line between physical phenomenon and psychological breakdown blurred, but one truth remained. Humanity was no longer united by curiosity, but divided by fear of what the rendezvous meant for the future of the planet. And then, just as the tension reached its peak, something unexpected happened. For the first time since its discovery, the pulses stopped. The emerald glow dimmed, the lattice between Atlas and Colossus faded, and the rhythmic signatures that had echoed across the solar system fell silent. Instruments recorded nothing but background static. For hours, then days, there was nothing. Some scientists speculated that the process was complete, that the energy transfer had ended. Others warned that the silence was not the end, but the pause before something greater. The sky, once alive with emerald fire and shadows, became eerily quiet, as though the two cosmic giants were holding their breath. And in that silence the unease deepened, because every instinct whispered the same truth. They were not finished. They were only waiting. For weeks, humanity watched in awe and terror as 3I Atlas defied the laws of nature, only to be joined by a giant 100 times its size. What began as a curiosity became a spectacle, and what became a spectacle turned into a transformation. The emerald light that painted half the sky, the lattice of energy that linked two impossible objects, the distortions in space-time, the signals encoded in prime numbers and ratios, none of it was coincidence. Atlas had been the herald, Colossus was the arrival, and the rendezvous was the message. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the spectacle itself. Atlas dimmed, its role seemingly complete, while Colossus stirred awake, igniting with geometries of light and casting shadows that swallowed constellations. For a moment, the universe itself seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. And now, every calculation, every ancient myth, every echo across the solar system points to the same truth. This was not an accident of celestial mechanics. It was deliberate. It was designed. The myths warned us, jade serpents coiling across the heavens, emerald banners blazing before the end of an age, dragons of green fire returning to the sun. They were not poetry. They were memory. Humanity has seen this before and recorded it as best it could. Now, with instruments capable of piercing the fabric of the cosmos, we see it for what it truly is: a cycle, a rendezvous that repeats, a process far older than our species. And the most chilling question is not what we have already seen, but what comes next. Was this meeting the awakening of something dormant? Was it communication across distances we cannot fathom? Or was it a signal, a call broadcast into the void, announcing that the solar system has been marked? The silence does not comfort. It unsettles, because silence is rarely the end. It is the pause before the storm. So look into the sky while you can, and remember, you are not watching comets or interstellar debris. You are watching the convergence of forces so vast that they reshape the sky itself. The rendezvous has begun, but its purpose remains hidden. And when Colossus moves again, when the silence breaks, the world will learn the truth that has been waiting in the stars for millennia.